Hello, my name is Winslaya and welcome to my video diving into screenshots I took from the first gameplay stream covering Giant Kings, which is the next expansion for Age of Wonders 4 and is coming out on April 1st. Just like I've done with all the previous gameplay streams by the devs, I went through and took screenshots of all the interesting numbers and mechanics that popped up for a few seconds so that we can look at them together. I have 35 pages here worth of screenshots just ready for us to take a look at together. Um, and I will have timestamps below, so if you want to jump to any particular topic or concept, you can do so. I will be posting these images to the official Age of Wonders 4 form, so if you want to look at them with me, you can use the link in the description below. Important disclaimer, a lot of the numbers we're going to be looking at today are from relatively early versions of Age of Wonders 4. The devs recently announced that there'll be at least 2 more DLCs coming out in the near future, so these numbers are likely going to change quite significantly over the development of Age of Wonders 4. For example, soon after the previous DLCs have come out, they've released patches that significantly change some of the way the new systems work to try and make it so that they're more in line or balanced with what is already in the game. And also, before we dive into this, I did want to mention that my video reacting to the announcement trailer didn't actually include some of the really good information that they posted here about the new content on the dev diary. The dev diary came out like a few minutes after I ended up posting my reaction to the trailer, and I think in that reaction to the trailer I actually covered some of the details that people were already posting in the Discord about the stream without actually watching the whole stream. So we've got a lot more to talk about today than in my last video. I think the first 12 pages or so have things that I briefly mentioned, so we'll go through those quickly second time before we really dive into the new things like this clay arbalist, which by the way has an incredibly powerful new tag, or at least it looks incredibly powerful. We won't really know until we see this stuff in action, but I believe this comes from a tier 2 tome that is specialized in underground mechanics as well as these new construct units. There's a clay arbalist, a charge unit, and I want to say a shield unit that are all tier 3. And when they have a lot of units like this in the combat, they just get extra defense, resistance, and damage. I remember talking to Cody, one of the modders for Age of Wonders 4, about these numbers, and he was saying that the damage seems kind of low when you look at specifically the shield class. So maybe what this system is supposed to do, we'll probably hear about this more from the developers, is I believe it's supposed to make it so that your units aren't able to deal their normal amount of damage unless there are other units like them in the fight. But if they have those other units in the fight like them, they're going to be quite tanky. I think this guy's going to have like a 5 defense and 5 resistance as just like as base stats when they have other clay units in the fight. This stacks up to 4 times, seems relatively powerful, but I don't know. We'll see once we actually get to see this in action. Look how giant the Giant King is in this in this event. He's like way taller. This guy doesn't even go up to his kneecap. He goes up to like his ankle, and then this guy goes a little bit past his knees. It looks like maybe up to his or his hips are. It's pretty funny when he's standing on a mount. It's as big as he gets, huh? There was this screenshot that I took from pretty early in the stream where I noticed that they were splitting off their hero with one unit to start clearing quite early. And I know this is something a lot of people who play Age of Wonders 4 a lot do. They'll just try and make it so that they don't spend too many units clearing the map. If they can spend less upkeep on that, that means that they can send their resources elsewhere. But it is interesting because it was brought up by people watching the stream that if you use less than 6 units in a fight like they are here, experience points get wasted, which can be kind of frustrating because you want to try and level up your heroes in particular as fast as possible, but getting experience on these other units, that's not bad. So I don't know. This guy was like, I think level 4 pretty early, like in the first 10 turns of the game, and splitting off like this pretty early in the game. This is just like the new crystal dwellings that they mentioned a little bit more about in the dev diary here. But this information is all stuff that I pretty much went over earlier. I don't believe I got the price point of $25. It's interesting it's saying it's a suggested retail of $25, but it is part of that expansion pass. Okay. But no, the really interesting stuff in the dev diary that I didn't cover last time in my other video talking about Giant Kings is this. This is a great screenshot of all of what you get from the Giant Kings, which is great because I was just getting to some of the stuff that people noticed in the stream itself that isn't here, like the Summon Storm Runestele, which is a terraforming spell for the world map. There is a weapon one that is a conjure ability. This is a summon terraforming thing that makes the terrain like what these guys are supposed to be around. So like the storm giant would make it so things are more coastal and have more rivers, I believe. Rock giants would probably make it so it's more mountainous. Frost giants will make it so it's more snowy. Fire giants will make it so that it's more, I think, like there's more ashlands essentially. Yeah, you want the ashlands. This is the snow type. This is the mountainous or stalagmite province, which might be new. I think that makes sense based off of the new crystal dwellings. They also showed a little bit about the weapons and how they work here and in the stream. So why don't we wait to really dive into the weapons here when we have some of the screenshots from the stream to go over those details. Now, these guys give you food and mana when you're in their terrain, kind of like the guy here gives you production when you have the correct terrain inside of their cities. This guy gets mana, and this guy also gets production, but less of it, which I hadn't noticed until now. There's probably a good reason for that, but I'm not seeing it off the top of my mind here. The Giant Kings get this nice bonus when they rank up their renown levels, which is different from the other guys. I believe I did get screenshots of that later on, so we'll get to that soon. The ruler here has, I believe, some pretty interesting things, like they can't put a weapon in their secondary slot. They only have single they only have these three weapon types that we saw over here. We have the Warhammer, the Giant Axe, and the Magical Obelisk. None of them allow you to equip shields, so there's no items that can go in here, and there are no mounts that can go over here. But other than that, you're actually able to equip quite a bit of gear to these new unit types. And then from here, this was all like malicious stuff, wasn't it? The new feudal stuff. Well, not all, but it just seemed to be quite focused on that new interaction. Okay, here we go. Now we're getting to the weapons. We have the Giant Axe, which allows you to hurl lightning and do this new weapon attack. I don't think they mentioned that two of these here allow you to hurl lightning, and then the other one, I think this one allows you to get the ability to conjure in the new weapon thing, which is this center path for the Giant Kings. At least that's what I remember from the stream itself. This says that the Giant Axe that we're looking at here is going to basically deal heavy damage, cleaves in a huge downstrike, dealing damage to enemies and the units behind them. If I remember correctly, the Warhammer can kind of like hit one unit 3 times, or it'll hit one unit and then the units next to them each once. It jumps around in a really interesting way in a cone, which is very unique, and I love that. It kind of reminds me of the way the monks' weapons attacks worked in Ways of War. But yeah, the Giant Axe is a bit different. This is, I think, more of a single action charge type thing, and the Mana Obelisk is for your mage guys so that they can stay a little bit further back and just throw things on the enemies and their adjacent units, dealing physical and magical damage. I probably got a good screenshot of that in here at some point. Yeah, I came when I went through the stream and watched it closely myself, whereas this is just something somebody would have posted in Discord. They mentioned also that they had this new Tome of Geomancy and the new Tome of Dungeon Depths, which I got a lot of great screenshots for later in in this video that we'll go over towards the end. I think that those were like the last things that they covered in the stream. I didn't move things around here, so we'll just talk about that near the end of the video. Clay Forge looks good. This is how you get those new units. I love the sound of that. Aristocracy and Monarchy are two new paths basically for feudal units that I already talked about briefly. But I don't really feel the need to go too much into detail on what they have here. Basically, the Aristocracy is going to have houses that you can associate units with, and then they get extra bonuses for being in the correct army, led by the correct ruler in the cities that recruited them, or if you summon a unit, they get like the house as well, and they don't have to be the racial ones. Even like magical summoned in units get that tag. And then monarchy is more about just having units around your ruler, your monarch, the guy in charge of the faction, or their domain. So it's kind of like going to benefit you if you're just playing defensively, or if you're concentrating all of your units around your leader, which is quite different from the way the other factions work. But I think they said that this should help out newer players, just give them some bonuses to allow them to get into the game a little bit more easily, a little bit more quickly. The feudal faction is the one that you kind of default to when you click through the buttons quickly. So I believe this monarch bonus is supposed to be intended for new players just to get into the game a little bit faster. I believe Aristocracy and Monarchy both have different tier 3 units that they can get from their units that evolve. One is, I believe, the Longbow Archer, and I can't remember what the other one is off the top of my mind, but I would have gotten a good screenshot of that. This is a new creature that we get some good screenshots of later in the stream, thanks to Voxel. Most of them are from the backside. Thank you, Voxel. It's funny, it's fine. But I think he was just trying to show us some features that they had been playing around with in the art development and the art department, which is fine. It's cool. It's good. All right, now we're getting to the things that I noticed when I watched the stream, the things that really popped up for a second. A good chunk of what we're getting in this DLC is going to focus on lore versus mechanics. I think a lot of the other DLCs focused on really changing the way the game plays and didn't add a lot of story or lore to how the world was built and how things interact with each other. I can't believe I didn't mention this earlier. I should have said this right at the beginning. I wrote it, so people probably read it. When asked about undead giants, since there are 4 giant types, Tom said that some of the giant types are probably going to be part of the next Archon DLC. I remember somebody in my community was quite excited to see some kind of giant spider rulers that were maybe underground. I don't know if that's a different giant type that isn't in the game, because we are getting some underground giants that yeah, are kind of like where the spiders used to hang out in the lore of the game. But yeah, let's just get back to what we do know about this DLC with this new Myrridda faction, I think it is, or location. What is it called again? It's a realm, right? Okay, so this is basically a fabled kingdom where giant kings ruled across the worlds within, and they had wealth, grandeur, basically took care of all of the dwarves and elves and people that were being created the first time. They lived in their cities, but then they became corrupted by their power, giving rise to the traitor kings, which I don't think we've seen anything about that. I would be very curious to hover over this and see what that says. Others blame Archon suppression for the destruction of the lost utopia. So there's going to be some kind of beef between archons and giants, and apparently giants don't like dragons. That's probably what I was about to say here. So they're all kind of against each other. Wait, are we going to get an archon ruler type? I don't know. That'd be kind of cool. But maybe they're giant archon like factions you can create. Oh man, I can't wait for that stuff. This is gonna be great. Archons and their allied dragons besiege this place. Okay, so that's an interesting alliance that is anti-giants. Poor giants, ending the age of the giants and doing something to the Endalion crisis. Does that mean they started that? The thing that ended the Archons by killing the giants? That would be pretty sad for them. But also, this is that story that they're talking about. The giant clans seek to carry on their legacy. Yep, their deeds pale beside what the people used to do in Myrridda. Yeah, so they're trying to reestablish that essentially. Okay, so you get artifacts for completing these new faded regions, which we haven't gotten to see in stream, but we do have a bit of information about here. If we zoom in, we get to read a little bit more. They're often part of a collection. Completing the collection will trigger an impactful collection happening, which is cool because I know a lot of games will like have sets of gear and weapons, and when you equip them, you get boosts to your stats. But I would much rather have a happening where I can choose the outcome to kind of role play a little bit more and to have some flexibility if I'm like playing the game against some other people, and I want to have the ability to go down different paths. When defeating a player, all artifacts of that player are claimed by the defeating player. That sounds a lot like taking somebody's heroes and their items, but it just happens. And I wonder if there's going to be a way to toggle that on and off, because I'm sure people in the multiplayer community won't want all the relics going to people who win. Just kind of like there's the way to switch off where the heroes go after they are defeated. They could go to the person who defeated them, or they could go to the owner. And generally, people like to give it back to the owner so that they have the ability to bounce back a little bit more easily, and things just don't go all to the winner's side. All right, what else is this? Ward of Fates. This region is protected by a spell, according to myth, woven by fate itself, which renders this section uninhabitable and blocks world map spells. Oh, it's like a spell jammer. Oh no. Oh no. Okay, well, as long as everybody doesn't have it, that's fine, I guess. Only when the fateful conflict overseen by the spell has been resolved will the ward disperse. So after that, you can settle that, it sounds like, and use world map spells, but you have to get rid of something here. It just says all faded regions are affected by this. It's not just one faded region. Apparently there's a few different types, more than 2, maybe like 4 or 5, I believe is what I remember hearing them say, but it doesn't say the specific number here. All right, so there's going to be a siege rework. They haven't talked about that. That's in the dev diary. Lava provinces and a lot of visual updates. Yeah, like underground, I think, is 2 very different paths. As Forge Masters, all Giant Kings start the game with an item Forge unlocked as they gain hero skills for one of the unique trees. Their prowess with the Forge becomes unparalleled. Right, so this is where I was like, I really want to show off their signature skills and weapons. The Crystal Dwelling is new, but we got to have the weapons in here soon. That would be, near the top of this document. Let's just keep going through the screenshots. So new Crystal Dwelling is cool. They got some things you can buy off of them, like a merchant. I think there also is a new merchant system, which we haven't seen yet. That they'll talk about it when it comes up in stream or in a dev diary pretty soon. You can make it so that none of your opponents are barbarians. All right, yeah, there's this new filter. I love that. I think that would be really cool if you could do that for more than what they even have here. I remember thinking about maybe for certain society traits that would be pretty helpful, and even maybe some spells or tomes and things like that. I like the ability that they're adding this flexibility, so even more would be great. I don't know how much harder it would be to add more systems to this, but I'm sure there's programming reasons why it wouldn't be too super easy. All right, so yeah, we zoomed in on these before. We don't really need to go over anything else here. We have the monarchy thing, which I didn't get a great picture of earlier, but we talked about it a little bit. They had the for the monarch thing, which makes them better, and they upgraded to something different. These guys are, yeah, just showing that we get the longbow here, or no, I didn't get a picture of the other guy. All right, I do have some text, so let's read what I wrote. Monarchy gets a tier 3 thing. Aristocracy gets the liege guard, which I misspelled. Most units can be mounted because Feudal is supposed to have slightly more or better cavalry units. Summoning any units, yes, I mentioned this earlier, like this gargoyle, I think he gets the house banner tag on them. And let's see, as long as somebody's nearby, they'll go to that. The cities can now go to the Rally of Lieges can now go to any city, not just the capital. That's probably in part due to how this new feudal system with banners work. They wanted to make it so it's easier to get guys in an army with the right banner, but also it's just good to be able to rally from any of your places and have that flexibility. You cannot reassign a unit to a house once they're in a house, so that is something that I think they did for balancing reasons. Being able to just move them around was a little bit too good with the way the stats are currently written. Right, here's Wizard Kings and Champion Governors. What they get is different than what the Giants get, and what the Elder Sovereigns get, and what the Dragon Kings get. But did we get to see them all? No, it doesn't look like it. It looks like we just got the Wizard King ones, which is like, mana, stability, knowledge for population. I like that a lot. And more mana income. If we compare that to getting food and getting more pops for less food, you get more for the earlier levels of renown on the Wizard Governor, it looks like. But then once you get to level 3, you're getting, each pop gives you gold, mana, and knowledge versus just knowledge. Yeah, level 3 is just better on the champion. It's really interesting the way that's designed. They're not like completely symmetrical. There's one that seems to be better in the late game, one that's better in the early game. Units cost less gold and draft is actually quite significant. Getting extra mana could be good, could be okay. And then, I'm reading something at the bottom here. Each level of renown gets you extra casting points and world map casting points. So that's not going to be a lot. You can only get 4 levels of renown, but that is going to be significant because every bit of casting points can make a pretty big difference in clearing the map and fighting other players. And I think the giant one that we showed off earlier is it's very production focused, making your cities do more, and then you get binding fragments in your quarries, so you're going to be really, really good at forging those higher level like gear once you get to renown level 3, which I've done in like the first 6 turns of the game before. I haven't done it with Giant Kings because I haven't played with that stuff yet, but I would assume it probably isn't that hard to get to this level and start building up your binding fragments, which I haven't talked about yet, but that's like a new resource in the item forge that lets you build, I think, tier 4, maybe tier 3, and maybe the new tier 5 weapons that you can get off of Giant Kings. And oh yeah, by the way, Giant Kings can now make tier 5 weapons because, they're really good, it sounds like. City structures grant +2 gold in addition to their normal effects is okay, it's fine. But I think you'll get more value out of the reduction on drafts because they'll let you just bring out your tier 3 and tier 4. And if you're building tier 5 units, I think you'll be able to build out your tier 5 units faster. But I can't remember which ones you can build in some off the top of my head. You can definitely build some of them though. I want to say gold golems is a unit that you'd build. All right, let's go back down to where we were in the list, which was right around longbows here. Yeah, yeah. And then the weapons. So the giant axe, we get to see this in more detail here. He is able to work like a charge weapon does. This attacks units in a 2 hex line, which is it is quite a bit different. It allows you to deal more damage to more units. If you're able to hit 2 units, it's like twice as much damage than hitting 1 unit. We kind of talked about the hammer a little bit, but it's I think easiest to see if you actually go watch it in stream. You can see basically how much damage it does compared to the charge unit. It should be comparable if you get 3 attacks off of this versus if you get a full charge off of this. But then again, this is targeting 2 units, and this can kind of target as many as are in front of it. If there's 3 in front of it, it can hit 3 with 3 attacks, or less with less attacks, or if there's less units in front of it. Apparently this obelisk is quite good as a single action attack that has 4 range on it. It hurts a lot of units, and apparently you get a pretty strong kick as well. So if people get up in your face, you can kick them potentially backwards. I don't know. This is kind of covered here, but this does say basically you can conjure in a unit. It's called like an animate weapon. And there's a bunch of different variations for the different giants. But at the end of the day, this guy gets the summon. The magic based weapon gets the summon, whereas the melee ones get some just like good damaging effects and modifiers to help them get up in people's faces and do a lot of damage. But yeah, this seems like it'll still be great at dealing damage, and I'll probably be playing it on a ritualist because you know me. If you know me, you know I love the rituals class. It's so good. It's so much fun in general. All giants that start with the hammer have this hurl ability, and that depends on your giant type. The storm one gets hurl lightning, and this says that it's a single action range 6 for 30 damage. That's a lot. At least it's only 1 unit, and there's a cooldown of 1 on this, so you can't use it every turn. You'll have to use it every other turn, which makes this faction probably an incredibly good one for the Spellblade. If you can alternate between this magic attack every turn with range 6 and a melee strike, that's going to be a lot of extra damage for the spell blades. Like magic attack makes physical attacks stronger for 2 turns, and physical attacks make magic attacks stronger for 2 turns. Like interaction that you can get, I think right at the first level, I believe that's how the spell blade works, but I don't know them perfectly. All right, so this is the conjure animated lightning blade that I mentioned earlier. This is going to say that you can bring in a tier 1 animated sword that lasts for 3 turns. This is once per battle, and if you wanted to, you can upgrade it to be a better unit that lasts for 3 turns. I think even at the highest level, it's only going to last for 3 turns. A lot of these effects are quite good, but if this unit can't get into a good position, and then it disappears after 3 turns, I don't know if you get a lot of value out of this path. Then again, maybe the weapons don't need to be right next to people. Maybe they can maneuver very quickly across the map. It's range 4, so your giant can move forward. It's a single action. They can move forward and then summon in a unit that's pretty far away from where it started its turn. That is unique. So maybe there's stuff I'm missing here that is actually going to make it quite a competitive ability to bring into a fight. Yeah, the bottom level, you get reinforced conjured weapons, which means they get extra health, they get extra status resistance, extra defense, and resistance. If I saw somebody is using this, I just avoid the weapon. I just go in the opposite direction and said, "You spend 4 points on that? I'm not dealing with it. No, no, thank you." Animated Storm Shield could allow you to hold the line pretty efficiently. So if you need somebody to tank, this could probably do that quite well. They only start with 70 hit points and 6 armor and 2 resistance. They're probably weak to some damage channel. I'm not too sure if they're all going to be ethereal or not, but if you're conjuring animated weapons, I wouldn't be surprised if they were ethereal, if they're magical in nature. The melee single strike for a shield unit is interesting. It says very specifically melee single strike, not repeating. This might be the only shield unit in the game that I know that works like this. Wow, okay. This is why you take your time and read these things that appear for 2 seconds, because that is very interesting. It's a lot of damage, and that means your shield can move forward to do a lot of damage or go into defensive mode. What if it goes into defensive mode anyways because it's only around for 3 turns? That might make this unit worth it. That might make this unit really worth it, because then it doesn't matter that you're only around 3 turns. If you can maneuver forward and still do a lot, that's nice. That's very nice. This replaces the conjure animated lightning blades with the glaive, so you can get a pole arm or you can get this shield unit. It looks like those are the 2 options for the lightning path, whereas I believe if you take like the fire giant or the frost giant, you won't necessarily see the 2 same unit types. You might see shield or polearm again, but I don't think you'll see shield and polearm on the 2 other giants. We haven't seen that yet, so we don't really know. Next, we have some stuff from the right side. I want to say this is the hurl, whatever affinity the giant does for damage. This was lightning damage for the storm giant. Hurl 30 points of lightning damage from range 6, I want to say, on a single action is quite nice. Sounds quite nice. Impactful animated weapons will make it so that when conjuring the animated weapons, you deal lightning damage to adjacent foes. Oh, I see. No, this is actually still on the left side here. We're on this thing right after the first level of the conjure animated thing. You can make it so that you deal damage when he gets conjured in. Down here on the left, it says that you can make it so that your conjured weapon deals more damage and inflicts electrified for 3 turns. That sounds useful, but is it worth spending all these points to get to? It's not exclusive with the other things, so I don't know. Sometimes combats don't take too long to get through, and if he's around for the 3 most important turns, could be very good. All right, now we're moving on to the right path for the Giant King special level up things. This says that you can hurl lightning that now deals damage to 2 additional targets within a 2 hex radius. Its cooldown is increased by 1, so the cooldown goes up, but you can do more you can target more enemy units. That will, I think, generally be worth it. It seems like Voxel was taking this and saying, well, he'll just use this one turn and then attack with other things the next turn. And I think that generally makes a lot of sense. Getting the chain lightning to affect a lot of enemy units will allow you to kill them off quicker, and you won't need the cooldown to come off of cooldown in most fights against the map if you're able to just deal a lot of damage on your first turn and then kill off the remaining ones on your second turn. Sundering Lightning is the other option. These are incompatible. This says you can make it so Hurl Lightning either gains 10 extra damage and inflicts these status effects, or you can make it so that it jumps. I believe the basic version is just a single target. That shouldn't be too hard to find. Yeah, this says it is targeting a single unit, and that means that you could make it target a single unit and deal a little bit more damage and make them a lot easier to take off of the board, or you can make it apply more generally. Now, if you go down the left side, if you go down the Sundering path, you'll be able to go down this side to get to Stunning Lightning. The Hurl Lightning now has a 120% chance of inflicting stun for one turn, and if that's on a low cooldown, which I don't remember how much of a cooldown was this on. Cooldown 1, that can be pretty good value. If you can just stun somebody every other turn, that means that they're going to get denied a lot of actions over longer combats, and even over shorter combats. That will make a difference. That will make a big difference. But there is a percent chance check, so if you're fighting higher tier things, you might not get that to go through, and I don't know. Maybe this has more value in the early game than the later game. Mass Chain Lightning says that you can now deal damage to 4 other targets within 3 hexes, and the cooldown is increased by 1 again. Since this is on the right side and attached to the, not stunning, the Chain Lightning right here, you'd have to increase the cooldown by 1 to get it to be even able to consider this. So it goes from cooldown 1 to cooldown 2 to cooldown 3 at Mass Chain Lightning, which means you're only going to be able to get to use this a few times in a combat. That's a big cooldown, and when you do, you're going to hit a lot of units for a pretty good amount of damage, but I don't know if I love that. I don't know if I love that. That's a pretty long cooldown to be spending 3 points on. The empowered throw will make it just so that the lightning does more damage, so you can make it so that you target more units here, or multiple units here and deal more damage, or you can just make it so you deal a lot of damage and you don't have to worry about the percent check on the stun on this leftmost skill. I don't know if 10 points of lightning damage is worth it. Then again, if you boost it through the mage's skills, like this warrior path that we have over here, you could probably increase your magic damage quite significantly. And then the right side, no, the left side over here is item stuff. This is all item forge stuff. If I remember correctly, one of these lets you get up to a new level of items, like tier 5 items should be pretty good in theory. Disenchanting gains 35% more binding essence and fragments is the first level, and I don't know how good that is because we haven't seen too much with the item forge yet. We know that you're going to need fragments for the higher tier weapons, so disenchanting a tier 4 weapon that you can't use to get more fragments to craft better tier 4 weapons could be worth it, but there's got to be like thresholds you have to meet to get any value out of it, and it could be that this doesn't actually generate any extra value for you in certain situations. Next, we have the Rune of the Storm, or Runes of Protection, which is, I believe, one of these 2 paths. There's one that makes it so that you deal more damage, the Rune of Power, and then there's the Rune of Protection. So this looks like it's generally 1 defense, 1 resistance, and this is something you can put on your items in the item forge, only goes on weapons. That makes sense. This would be for, or excuse, this only goes on armor. This would probably only go on weapons, although it doesn't seem to say that. I would imagine that's how that would have to work. Okay. So you would just make your own unit tankier, and you'd have the ability to make other units tankier through the item forge. Now, this won't go on general units. This can just go on heroes, which means you can place it on the giant that already has the extra boosted stats. That sounds pretty good in general. You're immune to electrified if you take this, and you have extra lightning resistance. Yeah, that could really counter certain builds very heavily. I was just talking to some people about how there are a lot of hard counters in Age of Wonders 4. If you take like the inner lightning that gives you lightning resistance and you take this, like there's no way lightning is going to hurt you in any significant way at that point. You're fine. Yeah, this is pretty standard for things we've seen in the game. There's like a hero signature skill that works pretty much the same way. You get extra lightning damage and a chance to electrify people. That's good if you've got the evocation tome, which gives you lightning blades, which gives you plus 20% damage against targets that are electrified. So you want to electrify things as much as possible before attacking them. Yeah, this should be good at allowing you to do that with your giant if that's your goal. It just says base attacks. And I think the hurl lightning is not base attack. It's like a magic thing that's different than your primary attack. Yeah, only Giant Kings can make tier 5 items. They can increase the maximum infusion points in the item forge by 1. If they get all the way to this last level, they'd have to spend 4 points to get here. So it seems like it's a pretty big investment, but I have a feeling that once you get to a high enough level, like 14, 15, 16, you've got enough points that you can spare a couple on something like this to make your units deal just a little bit more damage, just get a few more effects on their items. But we'll have to see what people do with this, if they're able to get it online fast enough to make it worth investing in, or if it's just too much to get there. I don't know yet. I like having the options for roleplay purposes. I think it makes sense that these giants would be good at building things, like given the lore and story that has been written around them. The new Geomantic Crystallization is a new transformation that makes your guys into elemental, which is really good because elemental can't bleed, be diseased, or I think poisoned. They should be able to get decayed if I remember correctly. But it's a very useful tag to apply on units, and I think a lot of people have been wanting this type of transformation for a long time. You can turn into undead, you can turn into like angelic beings, but there's no elemental transformation until now. Although there was an interaction, I think, in Materium that made it so your elementals got undying and never died. I don't know how that's going to work in the game with this transformation. They may have changed that, and I feel like they talked about it at one point, but I didn't write down what they said. You get extra resistances based on the terrain that you're standing on. Pretty cool, pretty helpful. If you're some kind of terraformer, you could terraform in a way that makes it so that you have the counter to your enemy's build. Say if they're doing lightning damage, you might go to a place that gives you the lightning resistance, although I'm not sure which terrain that would be. Woods would probably give you like blight resistance. I don't know. Desert might be like fire, or ashland might be like fire, and then on top of this you get extra damage on your attacks based on the terrain you're standing on. So if you do get fire resistance in one terrain, I'm sure you'd be able to deal fire damage on that same terrain. Yeah, effects would be increased for single shot attacks. Makes a lot of sense. This is the new crystal dwelling unit, or one of them, the lithorine core. It looks like it has some kind of linking ability that can go on other guys. It can reflect damage and it can regenerate. So it looks like it's a bit of a tank. It says it's a support, but it looks like it's a pretty tank built support unit, although it doesn't have any defense and resistance and relatively low HP. So who knows, maybe it isn't that tanky and I'm just misunderstanding what these names of these things are supposed to be telling us. All right. So this is runes that you can get on your giant, which has to come up in here because I said it something about my notes that I wanted to talk about them here. Oh, and here are the new animated weapons. Okay, so you can get the lightning shield, a lightning polearm, or you can get like the frost things here. It looks like it starts off as a sword. It can be a bow or a polearm. The fire guy can have a sword that turns into a hammer or a bow. So these guys get the bows. And then this must be the rock guy over here. The rock guy can get a hammer or shield. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's cool that we have that information already. Oh, and they showed us the other hurl lightnings and how they work. We have the flame one, the boulder one, and the frost one. Matches their affinity, was pretty much what I was expecting. This one can apply burning, this one can apply electrified. Both of these have the ability to inflict slowed, which is really interesting. The only real difference here is the damage type. You have physical here, and you have ice here. But yeah, there's are some things about signature skills that they wrote out that we didn't get to actually see in stream. So let's go over that, and then we might backtrack to some of these other details, like in the item forge. But I think we probably covered this when we talked about the screenshots that I covered, or covered that in enough detail. So at the first level, you get a rune. I think at this level, you also get some kind of rune. And then they said something special about what you get at level 8 and 16. I don't believe I actually read this too closely. So let's just take a quick look at this. Your signature skills are based off of the affinity themes runes that grant them passive bonuses. At level 4 and 12, they can pick minor runes like the critical rune, which increases your crit chance, or the reflecting rune astral, which reflects damage. They don't show that here. They show the fire or fury rune here, which is going to grant you very fast movement, gain a stack of strengthen or fortune. I think that must be, yeah, they mention it here. Level 8 is the stronger runes. So you can pick something like this fury rune, which, yeah, gives you movement, which is going to be very, very helpful for moving across the strategic map, not just the tactical map, but you can get across the map, the world map, a lot quicker if you have very fast movement. Whenever it uses an attack ability, gains strength and fortune, should allow them to deal a lot of damage, specifically if they're able to get those crits to trigger. But even without that, fortune has value because it can counter misfortune, which is a very powerful status effect. There are other things like the life rune, which grants undying to the unit, reviving after a turn in combat, which is okay, but you can also just stand on top of where that unit was, and it's an annoying interaction, but that's how it works. I prefer steadfast over undying, but mechanically they're not super differently. They're just like written in a way that you need to be more careful with undying than you do with steadfast. The brawn rune grants a mighty stomp ability in a 2-hex cone that can apply mobilize. Okay, stun. So you can apply stun in a 2-hex cone? That sounds pretty good for level 8. I think that's one I want to play around with now. At level 16, giants have access to the grand runes, which emulate the rune they unlock at 8, giving a weaker version of that to... So it just does... But this seems to be something different than that. This isn't the same color. That's shadow. Okay, let's keep reading. So taking the example above, the Grand Life Rune gives all units natural regeneration, and Grand Brawn Rune giving them 15% damage increase along with a high chance to inflict bleed. Alright, that seems good. I don't remember what the dragons get at level 16 off the top of my head, but that sounds like this is more for army bonuses than what dragons get. Dragons are more about making the dragon really good, whereas this is saying something that benefits the entire army. As an additional note, unlike affinity signature skills, these can be unlocked without having affinity prerequisites, just like the dragons, which I'm sure Cody will change in his mod. Yeah, I get it. I think that makes sense if you want it to be in line with everything else, but it's good for role-playing purposes not to have that requirement on these things. Let's see, what else do they say here? All affinity runes are available to your giants, so you can build them however you want. Yeah, it's good to have that flexibility. Yeah, that's pretty much they have there. Everything they have there. Let's go back to the screenshots and see if there's anything else here that I wanted to show off. Right, they didn't actually get a lot of information from those runes in the dev diary. So let's see. I got a picture of reflecting rune. That's 20% of melee attacks, not all attacks, just melee attacks get reflected. This one says you get plus 15% crit chance is a lot. I think that's more than other things get access to. Damaging rune gives you plus 15% damage on attacks, is not bad. Just across the board, it doesn't have any prerequisite like it has to be a melee attack or a magic attack. It's just 15%, and that seems like a large percent. A lot of things give 10% boost, not 15%. Although rounding could make it so that's effectively pretty much the same. Units gain 20%. This unit gets 20% HP for a signature skill. Seems pretty mediocre considering dragons get HP, defense, resistance, and something? And something? Okay. I don't see why you'd take Vitality Rune for 20 HP, but maybe it's enough that this unit just never dies, and more HP would be a bit ludicrous with regeneration. Like natural regeneration can heal you 20 hit points in a turn if you have 200 base HP. Guard rune is, yeah, extra defense and resistance. That sounds like probably one I'll try out a little bit. Effectively, that's got to be pretty similar to 20 HP though, so maybe not. This is, yeah, still worse than what dragons get because they get this and this basically. Dispelling rune will make it so at the start of your turn you dispel one negative status effect, just you on your one unit. At the start of your turn means you won't be frozen if somebody frees you, or insane if somebody insanes you, unless they put more than one status effect on you. Which, okay, if they don't see this, this is very good value. If they see this, they can get around it somewhat easily. I don't know. I actually really like that in theory. I like being able to dispel things in Age of Wonders in general. It's just very good to have like an AoE dispel or the ability to just passively remove things. Like the defender class has something like this for people who are near them. So I think combining this with that defender class pure defense could be pretty neat, could be pretty cool. All right, yeah, they did show off buying a crystal horse, crystal dwelling in this stream, which is cool. It looks pretty. It looks cool. It only costs 50 mana to get this mount, although I think if you're getting it just to have a mount, most units that can be mounted will start off mounted. The lithorine core costs 120 mana, which is quite a lot of mana, but it doesn't require casting points. So I think they just kind of took the casting points and added that to the mana cost, and that's what it takes to recruit this guy. If you have a lot of mana, I could see that actually being pretty worthwhile. There's some weapons in here you can buy for like 100 mana, or you can get some unit, it looks like, for 180. And is that a spell? It must be a spell for 300 mana. That seems like a lot of mana to spend on that, but you would need to get up to Stone Pact, which is better than Truce, and then Crystal Pact would give you access to even better units and I guess even better spells. It looks like Crystal Focus and Crystal Class might be enchantments that you can put on your units. Crystal Focus seems like an enchantment now that I think about it. May make your guys deal like some kind of crystalline damage or give them focus or something like that. All right, I talked about this earlier. The new Primordial Bloodback is a tier 5 shock unit that can hurl a large boulder. It can do a pretty big charge attack, and it also has killing momentum, natural regeneration, and primordial strength. All pretty good stuff. I don't think you should be able to get access to these units very easily or at all. This might just be something that appears in the map for you to try and clear out. And when you see it, you got to be careful because that's a lot of physical damage. That's a lot of physical damage, especially if they get their charge to build up not 20% extra damage, but 60% for going over 3 hexes. Is there anything else in here? Charge attack that deals damage to all enemies in a 1 hex cone. And a cone, and is a single action, means they just hurt. They just do a lot to your entire army when they come in to attack. So you got to make sure that you can kill them off in one turn, I guess. The hurl boulder is a also a 1 hex radius thing that is a single action, so they can move forward, throw a boulder one turn, then move forward and charge into you the next turn. Although this is on a cooldown too, so they can't just keep hurling boulders forever. That seems like a lot. It seems like a lot to try and fight into, especially if you've got a lot of like battle mages and supports which have no defense. They'll just, well, this guy does bypass defense, so does he care that much about it? Maybe not. What do we have here? While this unit is in battle, all friendly units gain, if this unit is attacked at the end of the turn, they gain a stack of strengthened and nature's might for 3 turns. Nature's might is something that we see here. That is basically you get extra blight damage. You can get 5 stacks of that, which isn't a lot of extra damage, but it does add up if you can get 5 stacks on like some single action attacks. That would be like plus 10 extra blight damage on like a skirmisher's ranged attack or a charge unit's charge attack, which may be enough to take out some units a little bit quicker, but it's not the bigger part of this ability. I think getting strengthened, boosting your damage in general, is probably more valuable, although they do work together. And then this ape is a tier 2 unit versus this one is a tier 5 unit. He does 21 points of damage. Might seem like not a lot less, but there's a lot more going for this unit in general. Specifically, killing momentum is going to be a real problem because if they throw a boulder and lower your units, they can probably kill off a few of them with the savage charge next turn, and then attack again if they're still have units nearby that aren't dead. All right, now we're getting to the tier 4 aspirant knight, which is a tier 2 unit that turns into a tier 4 knight. All the cultural units before this used to be just tier 3, so now we have tier 4 cultural units. I believe this is the only one that we know of up until this point, and it may be the only one in the game. I'm not sure. But I love the idea that we're getting tier 4 units. If you saw my mod spotlight, I kind of picked a mod that had some tier 4 units, some tier 4 cultural units, because I think that's a really nice thing to not have to get through research. This is something that you can just get access to by farming the map and using the experience to rank up your own units. There was something on this unit, I think Slippery, that got inherited on the knight, which is pretty cool. It's pretty strong. Because most, I think, charge units don't have the slippery ability to just walk away from people who would be able to retaliate against them. It's nice. It's quite strong in general. All right, so he starts as an aspirant knight with like 70 base HP, goes up to like 110, and his charge attack may not seem to do a lot more, but there are other things that they get on top of just more damage. If the aspirant knight tries to charge into units that are standing in a group, they'll deal less damage. So this might look like a lot of damage, but it's really only 18-8 against units that are standing next to other units. If they're all isolated, if you can push them away from other units, you can get this full damage, and it'll be a lot for, I think, a tier 2 unit. And then yeah, this is the guy. Once you take him to level 4, he gets graceful charge and inspiring killer. They didn't have inspiring killer at the aspirant level, so that basically makes it so that you can reduce enemy morale or increase your own morale faster. I can't remember which one inspiring killer is, but it just basically interacts with morale. And graceful charge is good. It's really good. When you charge into something, you get grace on your guys. And this does not trigger on retaliation attacks or opportunity attacks. So it's when you use your turn to charge into a unit, you can make it so that this unit is harder to remove from the battlefield because they heal themselves with that grace after one attack. Although if you can kill this unit in one attack, I don't think the grace triggers. So that is an interaction there. All right, we're getting to the tomes. Tome of Dungeon Depth is +5 knowledge, and you can make it so that you alter underground provinces into a dungeon, and that just goes out to your domain, up to the city's domain. I think that's like if you can only reach 2 hexes outside of your city, you'll only go up to 2 hexes, not 3. But once you get to the ability to absorb up to 3 hexes away from your city, then you'll be like altering your terraforming terrain into this new dungeon type. You get +2 production per adjacent dungeon province. So yeah, that just kind of means that once you terraform things, you get more production in your cities. And that's what that province does. It gives you a tiny bit of knowledge and a lot of production, as well as altering things into your special terrain type. This is a tier 2 tome, so you won't be able to get this too early, but once you do, you should have the ability to build this special province improvement. Next we have the dungeoneering conclave, which is, wait, that's that. Did I accidentally place this twice? It does seem like it. Next we have the Raiders of the Deep, which is a new unit enchantment. Enchanted units will gain cave walk, and when they're underground they get extra defense resistance, and while above ground they deal more damage. So there's a benefit regardless of if you're underground or above ground. Really interesting. Designed to go raiding. Oh, I like that. That's actually really cool. It just says enchanted units, and I'm not seeing what the affected units are, but it must be most of them. I zoomed this one in. Did I have more on this picture earlier? Does not appear like it. All right. Well, in general, it seems like a good ability. Getting extra damage is good. Dungeon Hazard says that you can make it so that you do an army spell that will deal 15 physical damage or 30 if you cast it in a dungeon province. So if they come into your underground space, you can actually hurt them quite a lot with this spell. But they also become slowed, which means I think in combat they're just not going to move very quickly. Wait, for the entire combat they're slowed? That means they have no retaliation and they can't move quickly. They have no retaliation is going to shut down melee armies really hardcore. I didn't read this earlier. I'm just noticing how neat that is. That's good. I'm gonna be using this. No more retaliations, guys. Sorry. Is that your tier 4 unit that retaliates a lot? No, sorry. Wow. Maybe it can be dispelled. Maybe I'm missing something. Okay, so this is what I mentioned earlier about how there is a shield unit. The Clay Defender has 5 defense, 3 shields at its base stats, and 80 HP. I think that's less than other tier 3 shield units in terms of HP, but the same in terms of armor and resistance, and maybe less damage. If you wanted to, though, you can get that damage to be more by just having other clay units in the fight, and you can get your defense and resistance to be quite high. You can get to be like 9 defense. Is that right? Yeah, you had 4, 7 resistance without any real investment, just building units. Which I have to say, that seems pretty good. We saw the Arbalist unit has this effect we talked about earlier. It does a single action crossbow attack, which seems to do a decent amount of damage. And I think Constructs didn't have a lot of ranged units, so this seems like actually a pretty welcome addition, in my opinion. There is this undying tag, which I believe all of the clay units are going to get, which means when they are reduced to receive 50% of its total HP after 2 turns, cannot be triggered. Yeah, no, so when he dies, that's what this is saying. When he dies, they basically come back, I think, after 2 turns with 50% of their HP can only be used once per battle. Yeah, that makes sense. They wouldn't just keep popping back up forever. That would be pretty hard to deal with. The Hall of Geomantic Resonance is something from a tier 4 tome, and this is going to make it so that you have a lot of food if it's in grasslands, swamps, or fungus, a lot of production if you're in forest, mushroom forest, or rocky or mountains. I don't know if you can have like mountain grasslands or some combination so you get both of these at the same time, but I think that might be possible. Or you can get gold from being in ashlands or mana for being in snow, ice, or sand. Really interesting. Really interesting. Not sure if that's worth having though, because do you need this much income in your cities once you get to tier 4 tomes? Maybe, maybe not. It could be enough to actually really help you out. This is not an SBI, this is just a building. This is just something you can make in your cities if you get to this thing, this tier tome. You can also get Resonant Blades, which makes it so melee attacks will apply a negative status effect based on the terrain. So I have to assume if you're fighting in snow, there's a chance that your melee attacks freeze people. That seems pretty good, but I don't know what status effects are and what the terrains and how those terrains interact with them yet. It must be that this just goes on all melee units. And then what else do we have here? We have the transformation we talked about earlier. We have the new unit, and then we have this summon elemental. Summon a tier 3 elemental of it on a target hex. The where you summon them will change the elemental that is summoned. So you should be able to make the tide spirits now. You should be able to make tier 3 tide spirits if you just summon on water. Wait, can you summon on water? I think I played recently and you weren't able to summon on water. I really hope that's allowed, and that's how you get your tide spirits, because I don't know how else you would go about it. Well, and that's everything I had for you today. That pretty much just takes us exactly to an hour, a little bit less, but thanks for joining me. If you saw anything else or heard anything else about the new content, if there's anything else like in this dev diary that you feel like I should have mentioned, please feel free to put that in the comment section below. Until next time, have a good one.